What's up, folks? Welcome back to TacticalTortoise. My name is Trevi. I'm done sulking about how overpowered the new Tyranid Codex is, and we're back to regularly scheduled broadcasting with a new episode of Warhammer 40k Tournament Tech Talk. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different and looking over lists from this past weekend's Dallas Open 40k Major and talking about some of the zaniest lists that did well at the event. So, unlike normal episodes of Tournament Tech Talk, we're not looking at a single list that did well. We're actually going to be looking at three, and they're not necessarily going to be at the top of the tournament. They'll be a little ways down, but we're mostly picking these for the meme factor. So, let's get into it. And before we do, remember to drop a like, drop a subscribe on the video, do all that YouTube stuff. You know the drill. Helps the channel out, makes me like you a lot more. And let's talk about some weird 40k lists. Now, a little bit of background on the event itself. This was a 155-player major hosted in Dallas, Texas, the weekend of April 29th through May 1st. That's right, this was a full 3-day event, running 8 rounds of 40k over those 3 days. It used mapped terrain layouts and had some FAQs on the updated Tyranid stuff, which has a lot of loopholes and inconsistencies in the rules, so it's good that they plugged those up. Things like specifying that Zoanthropes are supposed to have the Synapse keyword and Circle the Prey should not be able to be used more than once per turn, and the overrun stratagem actually does something. I'm sure I'll do a video on exactly why all of these FAQs are necessary later, but we are going to be talking about Tyranids a little bit in this video, so it's important to keep that in mind. Now, to start with, let's do a little bit of digging into the event and talk about the 36th place placer. This is Kevin McCormick and his War Dog spam Chaos Knight. Now, War Dog or Armiger spam isn't something that is new to competitive 40k, but we often see it in a Freeblade Lance Imperial Knights list. And with the new Chaos Knights Codex right around the corner already being spoiled, I talked about it on a live stream last week, and go check that video out if you want to see almost every page of the Chaos Knights Codex leaked ahead of its release. That's pretty exciting. But even without all of those new Harbinger of Doom rules, Kevin McCormick's out here fighting the good fight with his old school 8th Ed Chaos Knights Codex. This was a custom household using the Abominable Constitution Pride-Fueled Fury, basically making his army almost entirely immune to damage bracketing. That Abominable Constitution giving +1 movement and ignoring bracketing on the movement characteristic for everything in the army. Pride-Fueled Fury giving the army +1 attack and +1 to hit anytime it's bracketed, meaning that they, for the most part, ignore their melee stats, reducing when they bracket. So this army can take a lot of damage over the course of the game and not really feel it that much. The army was composed mostly of War Dogs orbiting a single big knight. This is a Chaos Cerastis Knight Lancer. That's right, one of the big shield boys coming out of Forge World. That Lancer being the Warlord and bringing the eager for the kill Warlord trait, as well as a coordinate targeting matrix to give it a once per game ignore invulnerable saves. Following that up, we had a million War Dogs. I mean, it's only 11, but still, when you're talking about big tanky vehicles, 11 is probably just fine. That's enough. You can calm down. This is 3 units of 3 with chain cleavers and thermal spears, so the classic Warglaive style War Dog, as well as 1 unit of 2 Moiraxes with lightning logs. That's to give the army a little bit of infantry sweeping punch, since almost the entire remainder of it is going to be equipped with those big heavy hitting melee weapons and melta weapons. Overall, the army was keyed to be extremely aggressive. The Lancer, using that eager for the kill Warlord trait, gets +1 to advance and charge, all of which stacks with full tilt and the sub-faction benefit for an additional +1 to its movement. All told, the Knight's going to be moving 17 plus 3d6 inches on an advance and charge in turn 1, between 5 and 6 attacks depending on if it gets into its opponent's deployment zone. Strength 16, damage 8 swings that potentially ignore invulnerable saves using that coordinate targeting ability. Any army that's relying on one big centerpiece model, and especially one that has to deploy relatively aggressively, is going to get that thing ran directly through with this big Lancer's spear, and that's going to allow the War Dogs to swarm up the table, use their objective secured ability to hold down all the objectives, and soak a ton of damage with that ability to almost entirely ignore bracketing to fight out the remainder of the game. As long as that Cerastis Knight Lancer takes enough heat off of the War Dogs that they can move up and take all of those objectives and start scoring Kevin his points, he's going to be able to roll the game out to a victory. And that did bring him to a 5-3 record at the end of the day. Again, 36th place out of a field of 155. Not too shabby, with the list only losing to armies that could effectively outscore them, those being Harlequins, Mixed Hive Mind with an emphasis on Genestealer cults, so again, a lot of really light infantry that can deep strike and move around the table, as well as pure Azuriani. A good showing for the Chaos Knights, I think, as they move into a new era with their new codex and a lot of brand shiny new mechanics to play with. It's nice to see that spamming War Dogs can do pretty well in the current metagame. But speaking of spam, let's talk about some real spam as we move to our 14th place finisher. Dirk Krakowicz, who is playing Cadian Astra Militarum to a 6-2 finish. This list is absolutely wild, focusing on the new Cadian supplement with its buffs to conscript units, especially with that Hammer of the Emperor buff from the latest Data Slate update, giving everything in those regimental detachments a Gene Rot Might effect, allowing them to auto-wound with their ranged attacks on rolls of 6. That, combined with the Cadian ability to, when they're given the order to take aim, full reroll their hit rolls, means that the conscript's normally terrible ballistic skill of 5+ doesn't matter so much, since they're going to be rerolling a ton and fishing for those auto wounds on 6s. If your opponent doesn't have great armor saves, that's going to rip through a lot of them, and even armies like Tyranids, which have a lot of 4+ or 3+ armor saves, are going to eventually be taken down under masses of lasgun fire. This list was built out of double battalions, one of them bringing 6 units of conscripts alongside 2 company commanders, the second one bringing a 3rd company commander and Lord Castellan Creed to bring alongside his 3 orders, as well as another 4 units of conscripts, bringing the total to a classic 300. That's it, just 300 guardsmen. We also have 2 command squads made up of veterans with lasguns, 2 3-team heavy weapon squads with mortars, as well as a Tempestus Scion detachment coming out of 9th Iodin Gorgons, which give them an exploding 6 effect on their hit rolls, although it is important to note that they do not benefit from the Hammer of the Emperor themselves, being Scions instead of the normal Astra Militarum detachments. That's bringing 3 units of Tempestus Scions, 2 units of 5, as well as 1 unit of 6. Those guys are mostly going to be in there to score secondary objectives, especially with their ability to deep strike, while these enormous bricks of 30 conscripts book it directly up the table and use abilities like Take Cover and Cadia Stands to make them very difficult to remove, especially with small arms fire. If your opponent doesn't have the attack volume to get through all of your 300 bodies, they aren't going to be able to wrest primary objective control away from you, and they're just gonna die. Can't score points as long as your opponent is putting hundreds and hundreds of guardsmen on all of your objectives. And this did pretty well for Dirk, going 6-2, only losing to the new and improved Tyranids Codex, losing to a High Fleet Kraken detachment by a wild 2 points. Almost was able to beat the Tyranid Menace, and then also losing to TacticalTortoise community member Corkin, Kitsmith Hannah, running a more standard Leviathan build. This army is absolutely wild, and definitely shows that a build focusing on that Hammer of the Emperor ability, alongside that Cadian White Shield's ability to remove the raw recruits rule from those conscripts, meaning that they lose the debuff of only having orders affect them on a 4+ roll, giving it a 50-50 chance to fail or succeed. So without that, those conscripts are going to be receiving those orders 100% of the time. And especially with the new ability for Astra Militarum to pulse the orders out in an aura on every unit that you select with them, you can be ordering all 10 conscript units very easily. With the number of orders that this list brings, alongside 3 company commanders and the 3 orders off of Castellan Creed, you can almost give every conscript squad a second order if you really want to. Being able to use Take Aim, or first rank fire, second rank fire, or even move to move again at the start of the shooting phase means that these guys are going to be able to push right up the table, clear out your opponent with withering firepower, and even when they get touched by enemies, fall back and shoot with get back into the fight. This army is an absolute meme, and I absolutely love that it was able to get 14th place, top 10% of the Dallas Open 2022, and I'm sure Astra Militarum players all over the world are going to be excited for the absolute deluge of lasgun fire that the new abilities available to the faction are going to allow them to. And with that, let's move on to the last list we're going to be talking about today. This is our 7th place finisher, top 8 for the Dallas Open, Clifton Russell with his High Fleet Behemoth Tyranids. And if you thought spamming 300 guardsmen was bad enough, this list is bringing a casual 10 Tyrannocytes. That's right, the Tyrannocyte Garden is back, even without Crusher Stampede, allowing these guys to do massive mortal wounds on the charge and be extremely difficult to kill. Clifton's here still making it work with the 9th edition Tyrannid Codex. This list is bringing a unit of Zoanthropes, which, again, the event did roll that they are able to use their Synaptic Imperative, giving the entire army, or at least all of the monsters in the army, including all those Tyrannocytes, a 4+ invulnerable save for 1 round, alongside a Neurothrope, Tyrannid Prime, and Winged Hive Tyrant. 3 units of Tyrannid Warriors, 3 individual Pyrovores, brought not only for the fact that they are extremely efficient units, but also in order to unlock additional dedicated transport slots, and a unit of Tyrant Guard with Lash Whips and Bone Cleavers. This unlocks enough slots in the detachment to bring a massive 10 Tyrannocytes to the table. That's so wild. Importantly, this list is in Hive Fleet Behemoth to get access to Lurk Biomorphologies, which allows you to switch out at the first turn of the game the ability of Hive Fleet Behemoth to reroll charges for a more important objective secured and count as 5 models to monsters. Those Tyrannocytes having the monster keyword are going to be excellent at holding down objectives, each counting as 5 models and each of them being objective secured by themselves. So especially if you don't have a mass concentration of models with access to objective secured, you're probably not going to be able to outnumber the Tyrannocytes on objectives unless you're able to kill them. Now, they aren't the hardest things in the world to kill. They do have a boatload of wounds at 15 wounds. That does mean that they give up big points for Bring It Down, 3 points apiece. So you only have to kill half of them in order to max out your Bring It Down, and only a 4+ armor save, but you have to remember that they are going to be affected by that 4+ invulnerable save on the most important turn of the game. And be ignored for the number of units that you place into Deep Strike. You can put a lot of these guys in reserve in order to bring them down on almost all of the center objectives at the table on the top or bottom of round 1. They also do an excellent job at screening for the Winged Hive Tyrant using the Reaper of Obliterax, who can jump around the table, get affected by Unstoppable Onslaught, the Hive Fleet Behemoth specific psychic power, to swing a bunch of strength 12 attacks to deal free mortal wounds in addition, thanks to the Reaper of Obliterax rules, thanks to the Reaper of Obliterax ability with +1 to wound, and access to essentially full rerolls between Voracious Appetite to reroll, the Lash Whip ability to reroll hit rolls, as well as the Prehensile Pincer Tail, giving a floating hit or wound reroll. A lot of the damage is going to be dealt by this guy, jumping around and then overrunning back into the safety of the Tyrant Guard to be protected by all of the Tyrannocytes, which are going to be the closest units, making the Hive Tyrant uneligible to be targeted. While they're not especially exciting, the Tyrannocytes themselves aren't total slouches at fighting. Each of them is equipped with 5 Death Spitters, giving them a total of 15 Strength 5 AP2, 1 damage attacks, although only at a ballistic skill of 5+, so it's basically an orc army shooting at you. Clearly, the skew of T7 wounds did Clifton pretty well over the course of the day, only losing in Tyrannid mirror matches, once to a double Harpy Leviathan build, relatively standard competitive Tyrannid stuff, and once to a pretty interesting Hive Fleet Jormungandr build. Even with those losses, though, Clifton was able to take that 6-2 record and put himself to 7th place with some enormous wins, scoring 715 victory points over the course of the day, meaning across all 8 games, he only dropped a grand total of 85 points, which is pretty good. Gives you an average score, even through your losses, of somewhere around 89, which is a score that I think any player would be happy to get. You can imagine that this list would be excellent at scoring maneuver secondaries like Stranglehold and being able to dominate primary with all of those big objective secured monsters floating casually around the table. And that's it. That's all the weird lists from the Dallas Open 2022 that I'm here to talk about today. I hope you enjoyed this video and this coverage of the event. If you did, let me know down in the comment section down below. Big thanks for watching all the way to the end of the video. Also, big thanks to everyone who supports the channel, YouTube channel members, Twitch subscribers, Patreon members that you can join in the link below. Get early access to videos, access to members-only tactics videos, of which I should have some more coming relatively soon, and also my undying gratitude. Remember to keep it classy, folks, and have happy wargaming.